Welcome to the Vincere Project, an H-hour production where we help people become more skilled, more competent, and more brave when they're facing the most difficult circumstances of their life. I hope you enjoy our podcast. All right, the Vincere Project is back. I have my number one guest, the first guest ever with the Vincere Project. All important things to Vince, the CEO of HR Training Events, my wife. There's a picture of her over my shoulder up on the above the bookshelf. That's her. Our niece drew that, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. It's a pretty good picture. I like that picture. It's over the bookshelf. That's really important in an office section. That's important to me. And then we got the fish over there. That's Aunt Kate's old painting. One fish is looking the one way, one fish is looking the other way. But today, the most important part is I got Mary Ruiz, my guest. 250 years. What do you think?
I think we made it a long way, and it's a good thing that we're still going forward, because I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
Yeah, I love traveling the world, right? But I have no desire to live any other place on earth, right? Like, there's something about the
No.
running water, air condition, having railroads, airports that function, roads that get fixed eventually, and some rule of law that allows rudeness to be an acceptable practice or behavior in the United States of America, and that's what I enjoy about it. So, no, we're gonna talk about a lot of different things today, Mama. What do you? Well, let's start with this. Let me ask you a question. Like, what were you hoping to talk about today, first and foremost?
Well, I mean, I always love hearing your rendition on how we met, but I think we're going to touch on a little bit of our military service and how we got from where we were back then to what we are today at H-Hour.
Cool. I think that's, yeah, my take on how we met is a podcast in of itself. Maybe we'll do that one Valentine's Day 2027 if the podcast is still going at that point. But I think what's important today is to kind of highlight some of our efforts and energies and successes and failures, and definitely in the last 10 years. Plus, for me, getting out of service 12 years ago, and then you just about 10 years, right? Like it's literally been a decade, and it's been a lot of fun for me to watch and witness and get to be your partner in that process. So I guess the short version, 250 years America, 1776, 250 years of America, just doing whatever it takes. And I mean, I think we believe in all those ideas and those principles, whether it is the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, all the people that cultivated and curated those things. And like, I think I always share with you, we need to all be inspired by George Washington at all times to avoid taxes at every corner, not evade taxes. That's what sends you to jail. And if the government shows up at your door, sometimes you got to grab the pitchforks and shovels, right? Not encouraging or inciting violence or resistance. It's just reminding people that like we do get a say or a vote in all things. And it comes down to being a strong community member, a member of a team in society, a culture of respect that's optimistic and hopeful. And I think you and I landed in South Jersey, and I think that's what we found in our little bubble. And for the most part, have been well received and have had the opportunity to build a business within a community that serves a very niche portion of the population, but I think it extends well beyond our immediate sphere of influence. And I think that's what we found in building a business and developing a business. So with all of that said, longevity is the theme and the story of it. But let's go back to, man, it's crazy to say this, 18 years ago, 2007, 2008, the surge is happening in Iraq, and there's a young Mary Ruiz running around in Iraq. What were you doing in that period of time in your first deployment in the United States Army in the
At,
GWAT?
During my first deployment, I was a supply specialist, which pretty much meant I did everything, just like any other military position. I went over thinking I was going to do one thing, and then there I was in United States Postal Service class, driving from fob to fob, not in the back of an MRAP, but in the TC seat, in sometimes a HET or fueler or a water truck, just to deliver a piece of mail and go to another base. After I was a mail carrier, essentially, to deliver my daily mail, which was a really important job. I mean, people really look forward to letters and care packages from their loved ones. I just missed the memo on the hey, you're gonna stay out all night on the road, and yeah, it was pretty. It was a very interesting job, to say the least.
Yeah.
I was also
Yeah.
an armorer, probably like 6 to 8 months, handing out crew serve weapons before missions. So I'm sure you saw many of our gun trucks while you were out on your route gold or at your So we were cruising around Solder City. So I'd issue out weapons before our mission. They'd get mounted onto the gun trucks. And then somewhere between 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 a.m., maybe they'd roll back in. I'd get a little knock on my door, and not really door, but big tent warehouse building thing. And then I'd have to go pick them back up, which is something I didn't feel like doing, but that was just part of it. So after my postal service job and my weapons cleaning position, I got really into supply and I ended up redeploying back home as sergeant, which was cool because I did learn a lot. I got to travel to all the other bases that were close to Taji, which is where I was stationed. So all around the general Baghdad area. So I got to travel Blackhawks, LMTVs, Chinooks, C-130s. I mean, travel was something that I love to do, and I really got to accentuate it overseas. We'll put it that way.
I think that's kind of a part of it, right? Is you detail just as a matter of fact, whatever the job was, and I think it speaks to the greater part of the military or the army experience is as significant as we might have thought any individual person was or we were in the storyline. I think everybody plays a significant role supporting the bigger mission, right? And to your point about the mail showing up, man, now we're back to blue. This light is just not favoring us right now. But like ultimately overseas, you're right. The mail shows up, and then I think the funny joke is that yeah, like a female mail clerk shows up, and you smell her perfume across the base, right? And that's just the reality of really intense environments where it's stressful. But there are men and
No
women serving that
perfume,
are
but all
out
right.
there doing a wide.
That doesn't even
Oh,
make sense.
shampoo. Then I'm sorry.
So whatever
Well,
bubbles you're thinking it looked
the
like
money,
we didn't look like this. We looked like we had been up for 24 hours because we did. I always wore a beanie cap because it was not
yeah.
favorable to be a female at that time overseas in Iraq. And what's interesting is like I have a few pictures overseas, but not many. But when I do, my students or friends are like, "Hey, why do you have a hat on?" And I was like, "Because I liked my head." And I wanted to keep it that way. So it wasn't something that you try to put out there. However, I was kind of a celebrity when I showed up. I have a good
It
personality,
it was the
obviously.
shampoo.
I did have shampoo.
Mama,
All
I'm
right, we'll put it
assuring
that
you,
way.
it was 100% the shampoo or perfume. Like, that is how it works, right?
You're
Well, so, like,
acting
I
like
think
you
that's part of it,
smelled
right? That
me from the flight line. Yeah.
that is how it works. That is 100% how it works because, in patrol base Texas, at JSS Solder City, or living at whatever outpost somebody's living at, when it's a bunch of dudes out there doing whatever they're doing in the big C versus the little C, right? And I think that's what the Global War on Terror showed us is that there are times when people could get designated to a battle space or an area of responsibility, and they could be the most bad dudes ever from whatever unit. And if nothing ever happens in that particular area, that's just kind of what the roll of the dice was and what they pulled, right? There's other people that are out and about, traveling the roads, flying to and from all over the place. And at different times in the global war on terror, specifically Iraq, that was incredibly, incredibly hazardous work. I mean, it is a those are big countries that are spread out, and much like any conflict before, the conflict doesn't stay fixed in one particular location or place. It evolves from place to place, and it's ever evolving. Because one place you had mentioned you spent time at, or you would run to at times, was Old Mod, and there was a period of time when I would go down there once a week to catch a shower and then go back up to Solder City. And I think that part of it is like that transient living that you're mentioning about living in a tent, in a Connex, in a bombed out building, on a floor, on a bunk, wherever you're living for that matter. I think in the military, at least in a time of war, you learn to make home wherever you are. I
Mhm.
think that's something that you and I have learned. You know, I think we've learned that and repeated that a handful of times. I think that
Yeah,
that's
I could
probably the
say
biggest
that
lesson in all that.
that little Vincent's baby bag has like enough supplies to get us going for at least 3 days if we ever hit contact and we need to, relocate. We always have enough stuff with us so that, if it's time to go, you grab the bag and go. No different than a rucksack.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting you mentioned that. I find that post service, and we'll get to your post service experience, but I wanted to start at 0708 with your first deployment, right? Because I think that was a tipping point, and you shared your professional development because of the chaos and the speed and the tempo of it, right? Post service, right? Oftentimes people ask us a lot about like prepping and doing this and having that and resources. And I always say more firepower is better and more fuel. But I'm also not an obsessive person like that. And I think in the beginning of our relationship, you had more of that mindset of like we need to have everything at all times, from the beans to the bullets, to the money, to the fuel, to the generators. And I'm more of the mindset that, like, yeah, I think you need enough to withstand an initial whatever. But if there's no rules anymore, for me, I'm going right to we are commandeering. It's Operation Commandeer through and through. And I think that's something you and I bring to our relationship and business because you look at it through the lens of logistics at all time. I look at it through the lens of operations, i.e., double running payroll today. So now we have a shitload of cash going out of the business account. So everybody gets that early summer start bonus. Hey, there's no bonus coming later this summer, but that's the one right there because Vince is a dummy. But ultimately, I mean, the logistics versus operation and mindset or perspective. What's one thing post service? All your experiences working supply and logistics. And when I say logistics, let me plug this about an NCO in supply. They're managing at times anywhere from $1 million of equipment, which could be a small amount of things, to hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment that they can be signed for, depending on the unit, the equipment, and the mission. What's one thing you learned in that experience that you carried over to post service?
So the importance of property is something that I always take into consideration, right? So like one MRAP, which is a mine resistant vehicle, on a property book, which is basically your printed out list of equipment that you're responsible for. It's not my equipment, it's the commander's equipment. However, my job is to be responsible for his crap. So imagine that, like you're responsible for all the vehicles on the street, but you don't get to drive any of them. Either way. So one of those mine resistant vehicles was about like $1.25 million. And we had over 25 of them on our books. So you multiply that by the amount of weapons, the amount of sensitive items such as M4s, 9 mils, night vision goggles. Everything is under your control. And it's not like you have to pay the full amount back if something's lost or broken, but they take what's called 1 month's base pay. So I kind of adopted that mindset of, hey, if I don't take care of my stuff in my house or uh, in the business or just my technology, I'm going to have to buy that again. So it's important, that maintenance is done to the laptops, to the vehicles, to the backyard, right? Like we try to keep everything in tip top shape so that you're not having spending that doesn't make sense. So the military did instill that importance into me. Keep track of everything
Yeah,
and pretend it's yours. And now it is mine. So now it's carried over effortlessly. The grass is too long, you cut it.
yeah.
The vehicle is dirty, you go wash it. And you don't have to drive through a motor pool to go do that, which is really cool. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something that was instilled in us, and it's kind of kills the noise in many cases, right? Like growing into post service, becoming a better civilian, a servant within the framework of our family and our business, I think is where we've accelerated because we take those lessons of managing these huge sums of cash or amounts of people and responsibilities and accountability, whatever the thing was, right? And I think that's important to know. We immediately bring those responsibilities over to the civilian world. I shared this with you years ago. We went on our journey of starting to build a business, and I had somebody make a smart ass remark, and they were like, "Yeah, Vince, you can't hear this. You don't have enough money." And in my mind, it was kind of funny, but it was at the same time, it was kind of like, dude, I helped manage $100 million in a matter of 2 months when you were home. And I'm overseas doing whatever the work is, like risking my life playing Grand Theft Auto 3. Like, guy, we can't even have a conversation about how to be a man. Like we can't even talk about how to be a dude or anything in that sense. So I think that's the part for me. I needed those experiences with civilian people, much like you shared. It's like our
mhm,
civilian friends and the good ones have softened our soul to understand and realize it's not a comparison thing. A lot of times people want to compare, one up, look in other people's cups to measure what they have or don't have. And you and I look
sure.
through the lens and filter of war fighters. Like, why would you ever want anyone or anything else to know what you have in your arsenal or at your disposal to pull the trigger on? I think that's
Yep.
something you and I talked about quite a bit is like, yeah, it's okay that they see the Bradley or the MRAP or the 50 cal, but they have no idea that with a radio call or the push of a button, like you can rain down fire from all sorts of angles on their world. So I think we use that mindset when we apply it to business, and it's a less
Hmm.
aggressive way. It's a level two way. Level two in the sense of we're hyper aware and we don't keep score or tally, but we don't forget anything, right? And at the end of the
Right.
day, because the operation and the mission is built with such a long runway to serve H hour and nothing else. So it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with H hour. It literally has nothing to do with anything in terms of how we decide. I think that's the linear focus in how we manage mission. What would you say in that process, right? Post service, accountability, responsibility, keeping
Sure.
control and operationalizing all of your stuff, using your equipment, keeping everything going and the resources. How did that tie over into your school experience? Because you did go to school for a while to finish your bachelor's and master's degree.
Yeah. So at some point, the word sergeant, you're a teacher essentially. And so I would always recommend to everybody that's been in the military that doesn't know what to do, just give it a try. I mean, you've done it already for at least minimum of 4 years or whatever your contract is. And I found it to be like a flawless transition as far as, being able to disseminate information to those who can then reteach it to somebody else. So if somebody else is able to teach what you've taught them, then you're a successful teacher. So yes, in New
Yeah.
Jersey, there's a lot of school that you have to go through. However, you have to make that decision for yourself. Do you want to put the work in and then, get the little piece of paper with your name on it? Or do you just want to, you can teach many things outside of a school setting, I'm assuming. However, I feel like it was worth it as a starting point for me to become a teacher. And what was interesting is in the military, there's just one way of teaching it. That's it. You just, you have your training manual, you read through it, you give a demonstration, you have your soldiers teach you back, and then that's it. But in the civilian world, there's different learning modalities, which I found to be really
Yeah.
interesting. Some people are auditory learners, others are kinesthetic learners, and they like to be hands on. And some people can just watch something happen and then learn that way. And so I really would have enjoyed that in the military. And I found that because there's so many different ways you can go about teaching, plus using technology, it's really unlocked a world of like wonder and excitement. At least, being from a rigid background to a more fluent background where there's many options and choices. So having
Right.
that discipline and that internal structure from the military has really helped carry forward my teaching career. About 5 or 6 years in, I was nominated as the teacher of the year where I work in Stafford, New Jersey, which was really exciting. And it kind of made me put, my foot on the pedal to go ahead, get that master's degree. And then, you hit that point of, all right, well, like, what's next? Right. And I know you hit that as well after you got your master's degree. We kind of have to make that decision. Do we want to, take orders and follow through from what someone else says, or do we want to lead from the front? So I feel like that was kind of the seed that was planted with each hour to get us started. But there's a few other things that go behind that as well.
I think you're being modest, but I do agree with you. I would say that being a non-commissioned officer, it's teach, coach, and mentor, right? Be, know, and do everything that is the profession, right? And I think that carries over to education. I have found for me early in my career, it carried over to counseling. Which was an interesting transformation in that process, right? It's like you go back to being a private, essentially, and a novice, right? Yet you
Yeah.
still have this advanced level of insight and perspective to facilitating things and leadership. And I remember you were doing student teaching while I was simultaneously doing internship or one of my internships. And something we kind of, and I'm paraphrasing some of the conversation, but it was something about like, hey, sometimes people look at you, right? Because maybe they know you're a veteran and you're coming into the room. Now you're in your 30s, but it's like they assume you've rolled off the couch or that you just did nothing in the military the whole time. Or they don't understand what the military is or how it
Yeah.
functions, so they assume that, like, you had no other options or choices with your life, and I think that's kind of a fallacy. I think, like, yeah, there were some absolute morons that I served with in the military. On the polarizing end of that, there were definitely people that were, like, Mensa level IQs, like, ended up going to Harvard and now work in all sorts of industries, whether it's in medicine or finance or education or have run businesses or and are massively successful on a wide range of levels. I say that because I zoom back into I think some guys and gals when they get in the military, and I notice this teaching at the college is there's a little bit of imposter syndrome that creeps in. Like, oh, I used to be this when I was in the Army or the Marine Corps or the Navy or the Air Force or the Space Force or the Coast Guard or whatever and how did you find you dealt with that? And is that something you dealt with at any time?
I feel like anytime you go to engage with a veteran, you're either going to know that they're telling the truth or they're not. So if they start talking immediately about, whatever battle they were in, or if they knew like a name drop veteran that, maybe was KIA or is significantly known for something, I would just walk away. It wasn't part of my conversation. I found that the most successful veterans are the ones that don't have the high school football story. They're the ones that I see, I still follow on Facebook from my deployments or the different units I was part of. They're starting their own businesses. They have their own homesteads. They are educators. surprisingly enough, probably close to 25%, maybe a few more, are educators in some way, shape, or form. And they're very serious people. They don't post nonsense online. Every time something happens, it's not, poor me and this needs to happen. Now, I understand that some veterans become advocates, which is something totally different. That's their job now. However, like you won't see veterans who, you know, have that real combat action or have those real experiences talk about it openly. I mean, we're on a podcast right now, right? But it's not something where I would just go up to someone and say, like, oh man, route gold. We were driving in, dropping off supplies. They were shooting at us, unhooking the barriers. Like, well, yeah, that's great, but how about like, oh, what branch were you in? How long did you serve? Oh, maybe we have a connection on, where we were deployed to. But honestly, I don't care what kind of weapon you had. I had that happen to me enough in bars growing up in Colorado. I'd have the infantry guy sit down next to me and be like, yeah, I got this M4. I'm like, do you shoot it? I mean, that's really cool. What do you do with it? You just go over and you just kill people? Like, wow, that's so amazing. Like, so yeah, I feel like if we have something to talk about, it's, how have you utilized your benefits in a positive manner?
Yeah.
Are you into real estate? Are there different things that maybe I'm missing, right? Because there's benefits all over the place, especially educational benefits for veterans that we don't know about unless somebody else tells you. Same thing with VA benefits, right? Like we recently found out from a friend that we could dig a little bit deeper with a few benefits. So, and those are the conversations I want to have with veterans. I don't necessarily care to engage with the imposters, like, hey, let's raise money and then supply all these veterans booze because that's going to help mental health. But again, that's for another podcast. This one's positive.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of it, right? Is everybody has an agenda or motive for what the reasons are and their purposes, right? And I'd agree with you, right? Like, you're being funny about it, but I would say that the greater majority of men and women that do die by suicide, that are either in service or post service, alcohol and drugs is directly connected to a lot of that, and it's kind of in the fine print, and it's a dark part or spot that nobody wants to point to, but I've yet to see it in my own personal experience where alcohol has favored somebody in their mental health. It just doesn't because the extremes and the hits of highs and lows are kind of exacerbated upon whatever may pre-existing condition or what that person's going through in terms of neurobiology. So I'm sensitive to that stuff, especially if I know at times that there's some people that have problems or it's created some difficult manage in their life. I'm sensitive to it. So I think that's just my stuff. And you hear me share that enough because I'm in the office. I'm in the chair listening to people what they struggle with. And a lot of times it's those familial or social connections where the booze was part of the lubricant. Like, oh, every Christmas we'd have the eggnog. Hey, every 4th of July we get a bottle and the flowers. Hey, we celebrate it and remember this way. It's not a condemnation or attack on somebody that has a good regulator that can manage booze or whatever. But in our community and in our brothers and sisters, man, it's I don't know too many good stories that have ended that way.
No, and
That's just the unfortunate part.
I think physical fitness and mental fitness is a much better way to have and share camaraderie. But again, that's kind of where like the training and events side gets some of its, I guess, steam or forward momentum, just ways outside of alcohol that could benefit a person.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that's a hyper specific part of it, right? But I mean,
Hmm.
it can be extended beyond alcohol. There's a lot of things that can hurt a lot of people, and I would say
Sure.
in the veteran community, alcohol is it's been a lubricant since the beginning of time. It will probably continue to be. It is a good part of the story in some ways, but I think over time, it's just demonstrated over or a career or a lifespan. It's probably not favorable to the guys and gals that struggle with it for whatever the reasons, too, right? For whatever the reasons.
Mhm.
So I think that's part of it. But the imposter syndrome thing is, I would agree with you. I think sometimes believing who you are and what you are if you're going into your next career and if you don't have the mindset that you are the best, you just need to act like it and behave like it. I would tell anybody this is that I am the best counselor. I'm the best counselor that you know. I'm the best counselor that Brooke knows. I'm the best counselor that your mother, sister's friends, neighbors know, right? And that's not saying that there's not other people doing stuff well beyond the scope of Vince. It's beyond my imagination. But if my wiring is any other way and my software plays a different loop where I don't believe that I'm the best at what I do, then it's just not going to work for me. I'm not going to function well and I don't outperform my previous position. So I try to instill that, inspire that in other people, to your point, in their post service. What I find, this would be interesting to you, and I never even mentioned this to you, but it's a good time. A lot of times with the
Oh,
students that I have in the undergraduate and the graduate program, they'll explicitly state things like, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing this career," and they'll look for validation from me. Or they'll say, "Hey, I think I'd like to make this amount of money," or "These are the things I would like to do." And you know what I often offer right back to them is like, "Well, why would you place a limiter on any of that? Like, why
yeah.
are you sharing it with me? Like, you're looking for validation from me that I can't give." But you're also talking to the professor that thinks he's gonna counsel in space.
Thanks. Mm.
Yeah, like, I know, like, if I can get in a spaceship tomorrow, I'm already talked to you about it. I'm gonna go to outer space. I'm gonna do counseling in space. Like, it's just how it is, right? And so the day-to-day stuff of, like, double running payroll, this is literally what just happened, like, 2 hours ago, or things like that, right? Like, I think those are just those are minor, and I share that with my students explicitly because, like, you have to set your own goals, on a scale that are beyond the comfortability of your dining room table or with your friends and family, because none of your friends and family are gonna think you can do it.
Unless you've done something similar that they would be like, "Oh, okay. Well, we've seen them to do this, and it's closely related."
But
But
that's a
if it's
predictive
something
outcome. Yeah, that's a
sure.
predictive outcome. But post-service, there's no guarantees. There's
Nah.
generals and colonels that struggle just the same as privates, and in some cases, the specialists and young sergeants at a competitive advantage because they don't know any better, and on scope and scale, they were in the military for 4 years, and now they're just starting their career. Like,
Oh, yeah.
massive competitive advantage
High
among their classmates or peer.
yeah, I think it's much easier to get out of the military enlisted than it is as an officer because you've never had that paycheck. You've always had to work hard for a position, whether it's to make promotion points or, it's always that 1 or 2 points difference between this level and that level. And, when you're on paper, sometimes it's not necessarily accurate because who's to say you don't fudge
Yeah.
something? So although you're
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
best,
'Cause
you're
well,
not
that's the thing is
really the best.
well, guys and gals' identities are caught up in like, "Oh, I was a command sergeant major, right? I oversaw a brigade or division," right? That's thousands of troops. Talking about power, right? Hey, I was a colonel of a brigade or a general officer. I was a division commander, right? That's power. You know what I mean? That's not about money.
Uh-huh.
That's prestige and that's power and influence, right? That's what that's about, right? And I think the interesting thing is post service, you meet somebody, and if they identify with their rank or their unit or what they did in the military, to your point, it's almost like an automatic tune out of like, "Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
awesome, no doubt, I'm so proud of you.
That's
Thank
great.
you for doing that, like, awesome." And it was like when you and I were at a veterans event and somebody lectured me about what my job was in the military overseas.
That's great. Were they outside the way?
Yeah, and that's what I said at the end of it. They just went on and on and on, like, just totally trashing what our job my job was and what I did in the military overseas, and they had no idea, and then I was like at the end of it, I was like, all right, that's great. Just walked away,
Cool.
right? And I
Do
think
you
that's the thing is I'm not here to change anybody's mind or defend anything or justify anything. But I will say this for me, I think I've had you as a sounding board, which has been helpful at times too, right? And I think that's a superpower, right? I don't have to go far to say like, hey, I'm looking at this through this lens, and this is how I feel about it, and what are your thoughts, right? And I think COVID was good practice of that for us
Mhm.
to figure out ways ahead. But I think we're all over the place right now. I think I don't want to press this thing beyond like 45 minutes because we're already 15 minutes over what I like to be.
I see that.
Let's talk about hey 20. So post graduate school, we're both finishing graduate school. We're picking up our life. We're piecing it together. You decide to go forward and fortify a battle position. I support you in it. COVID hits. We figure it all out. We get through it. But pre-COVID 2019, I say, "Hey, I'm in the Bush Center." I come home and I'm like, Mike Hansen and Todd Connor were encouraging me to start H Hour, and I'm like, "All right." And at that point, I had some good mentors and done some work and gone to different retreats and events and had some amazing other veterans give me the encouragement. I came home to you and I said, "Hey, I think we're going to start this business. We're going to start with this little idea, Vince, the counselor, right? But I think we can expand it and over deliver in many different ways." And the exciting part is like we're well on our way to becoming a Bitcoin treasury company and or potentially a real estate company simultaneously here in the next decade, which is crazy. But let's go back to 2019. I come to you. I say, "Hey, this is what we're doing." What were your thoughts? You've shared them with me, but I think it's kind of interesting. People can hear about the business.
I think at the end of the day, I knew that since you're in the business of people in the military and you were always good about talking to people, solidifying deals, and then also reading the room. I knew eventually, like Vince's counseling would be a thing, and it would be something that you could use as a career. I didn't necessarily know how many different streams that we would have coming out of H hour. So it's not just counseling, right? There's the professional development, there's the coaching, there's our beach events, there's professional development for nonprofits. So to start all of that up at once seemed like a pretty overwhelming task. But then you also think about like a battalion or a brigade rolling into a new area and setting up camp in less than 24 hours. So I figured, well, if
Yeah.
they could do it in less than 24 hours, there was no chat GPT when we started, but we started with that one EIN form. Then it was, all right, I guess we need an accountant. Then it was, so like step by step, we would just build on what we needed to. And it was fun to be side by side with the process so that I could learn a little bit about the business. And, eventually Vince's counseling allowed us to do so many other things as a backbone. And it's just using the skills that you learned in the military. And, you know, you can't learn that in college. Nobody's going to tell you how to make $1 million deal with somebody in a school when you're, boots on ground in the Middle East or Africa. Those are the experiences that we have as veterans that can't replicate that. And so if you can make it through that, a little piece of paper from New Jersey and a little like scare from the IRS isn't really going to deter us.
Yeah. No, you're right, you're right, and I think it's about how you toggle and deal with fear and greed. The good thing or bad thing for you being married to me, not only as a business partner and also growing this thing together and partnering with remarkable people along the way, we do have amazing people around us, and I think that part of it is because I'm not wired to fear or greed. It's not the Vince Gets Rich show. It's not one size fits all. It's we're gonna have fun, help people, and make money doing it, and if we can't do 2 of those 3 things, I immediately say no to it
Right.
all the time. I immediately
Mhm.
say no to it. In every meeting with every person, I'm like, I don't that doesn't even matter because I'm already thinking 100 years out. Like, if America went 250 years, right? GW and a gang weren't like, oh, I can't wait to Elon as a trillionaire. That wasn't the plan or mission. They couldn't anticipate any of that, right? We're in a very different world than they face. But for me, I draw like, because I read about the history and how they did it and what the considerations were for me on my end, I think about it in terms of like it's a counterinsurgency, right? H hour
Yep.
represents a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And like it is opening and setting up a whole series of different forward operating bases, some combat outposts, and figuring out which ones work and which ones don't work. And then at some point you are going to double down. And I think you use our experience in the GWOT where maybe there was some failed policy or not well thought out plans where in Baghdad or in Bagram, you're going to hold a piece of ground there forever. Like, and that's how I look at it is like right now we're in that window where in 2028 we open up to outside investment, right? At that point, we're looking to plant the flag in whichever place and location is most profitable entity because our investors are going to demand that and require that. Whoever the HR people and the equity people and the bankers and everybody, they're going to want to know all that stuff. But if Elon can become a trillionaire and put people in outer space and build electric cars, we can go forward and serve as many people possible through our corporate entity of training and events, which I think you're leading us forward. The reality is too, Mayor, what you and I have learned, I find, is that it's easier for Mary to reach out to another boss lady than it is for Vince to reach out to a boss lady in the corporate space. That's just what I find.
Yeah. Yes, at times. Starting with how we can improve their work environment versus maybe what's wrong with them is a stronghold. But
Yeah.
yeah, like some people can be intimidated um, by a Dr. Vince type figure. So I
Yeah,
feel
I'm a
like
tech person, right? Because
col-
I'm competitive.
collaborating and growth and self improvement are kind of what I preach. And if it's something that helped me along the way in my journey, I like to share that with as many people as I can and kind of paint a picture of what it's like. I mean, I'm always climbing mountains, proverbial mountains, actual mountains, mountains of things that they just appear and it's like, well, what are you going to do? Sit down, wait for it to rain on you, or
Yeah.
are you going to keep going up the mountain? So, I mean, it's, everything is a learning experience. And the more we learn, the more we can give back.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree, I agree. You have so much stuff coming. I wanna keep going. I don't know. A few more minutes, okay?
Yeah. 2?
Is a few more minutes okay?
Yeah, a few is 2.
Okay. Alright. So I think, I wanna get into, like, the H-Hour Institute. I wanna get into the H minus program, but I think we're gonna hold off on that. I think it gives us more to talk about in the future. We bounced around and hit a bunch of different things. I think it was more introductory so people could get a feel for you, how we decide things, how we look at things. But, I look at it as it's a good collaborative space. I mean, I like to make bets on my best friends, do good things, and to win. I like to reward those relationships in different whatever capacity,
Mhm.
because I think that's the fun story. I think when we can build those relationships and deliver that product and content to other people, it matters a lot. For me, you taking over HR training and events, like, has been a game changer, and managing the expectations of some of our clients and those relationships and the expectations, some of the planning process, has been super helpful, and freeing me up to stay focused on building out the counseling side of it this next few years and making sure we land in a good space, supporting all the people that support us. What do you,
Yeah.
what do you attribute one thing to in terms of service or at least with HR training events? What's the one thing you've observed that you think is like the greatest competitive advantage people can give themselves, whether it's in a personal or professional capacity?
It's that personal discipline, you get up at 5, you still go through the same process of giving yourself a little physical fitness or whatever you can handle at that point, eating a good breakfast, having a nice cup of coffee, and then getting right at it, following up with those leads, reaching out to those team members. And essentially, the team members at this point are more like friends because, we operate in a space where it shouldn't feel like work. It should feel like you're having fun with a little paycheck. But at the end of the day, I want to work with people that love what they're doing. And it's an advantage that we didn't have in the military. I couldn't just like finger point and be like, I want you as my photographer. I want you as my assistant at the veterans retreat. So we have such a cool squad of, I don't even want to call them employees, but that, assist in our beach events, in our veterans retreats, in our corporate trainings. And I'm looking forward to a few more events this summer and then kicking off the fall with something strong.
Yeah, I think you said it well. I think employee is nothing we ever use or make as a grand statement of like employee
Mhm.
management or something like that. I think it's a little bit misleading. I think it's misleading. I think it's appropriate in some context, but it's misleading in terms of like what it is. And I think those are relationships that are sacred for us, and we're always looking for partnerships, right? Whether it's to partner for one day, or for 1 hour,
Mhm.
for 1 month, for one project, for 1 year, for one career, whatever it is, we look at it as partnership because I think we took what the sages said before us, right? And collectively, we made a decision in 2019. I do remember this conversation. I only want to work with people I like.
Mhm.
And you were like, "Yeah, I think if we're gonna build this and do it and have any longevity or staying power, it's gonna require working with people you like." And then part of that we've adopted over the last few years is building a really long runway in that relationship, and whatever that looks like or feels like. And I don't think it's I think what happens is there's like as a responsibility in that storyline. I never wanna let down somebody on our team that I gave my word to.
Yeah.
I don't wanna
Yeah.
mislead anybody. I don't wanna fall short. I don't wanna give 70% effort when it requires 100% effort, and
Right.
and I think that's when working with people you like is probably the most important part of it. Man, I have so many more questions for you. How do you think we did today?
I mean, always good. At least good. Not bad. Always room for improvement. But it was on my checklist of things to do
Yeah.
today. So I figured before I, call QuickBooks and fix this issue that occurred at whatever time this morning with payroll. So yeah, I mean, every day's
Yeah.
enjoyable. It
We don't
doesn't
even
feel
know if
like
anybody's
work.
still listening anymore. Yeah.
I'm probably my mom and
Yeah.
definitely
'Cause it's not.
Jamie's mom. Well, we made it this
Yeah.
far.
They'll definitely listen to this. So I
Well,
probably
yeah, if I'm on it.
shouldn't probably talk about how, like, you're Mary, the wife of the Vince.
Well, you're
The escort
Mary's
of the King
husband.
Vince.
Where I come from, you're Mary's husband. So I don't
Vince's number one step milf and milf.
something like that. Yeah. I mean, you look good on my vacation photos that I used to take. So Yes,
I'm the eye candy. I gotta work on my abs. Actually, you know what though is we could highlight this though. Hey, how important is that physical fitness thing for longevity in terms of professional work, post service?
it's
Because a lot of
very
times guys get in the military and they just let it go.
no, I think it's something that it's been instilled and, you know, you could say you gotta make your bed first. I'd say that absolutely, but I wanna make sure that some kind of physical fitness, even, it's gonna be 100 degrees today. Let's say you walk down the street and back before it reaches a ridiculous temperature. Stretch, mobilize, right? Because you might go to throw that football and your shoulder might just pop, or that ligament that you've been holding on to, finally says goodbye. So it's just
Yeah,
be proactive, not reactive. Like, would I love to be, signing up for a 100 miler once a year and doing some great things? Absolutely. But it's just not the phase of life right now. However, being in that good physical
yeah,
shape and eating healthy is definitely optimize, energy levels, mood. If I eat like crap and I don't work out, it's just a bad day for whoever comes in contact with me. And that's not good if, I'm reaching out to a new client or about to kick off an event. Like, how am I supposed to have others follow me if I'm not doing what I preach? It doesn't make sense. If I show up to one of my women's workouts and, I have like ketchup on my fingers because I was eating fast food, chances are they're going to kind of look at me and be like, wow, like, probably not going to follow her advice. So definitely, unfollow on Instagram. However, that image means a lot, even if it's just to yourself. And sometimes we can get absorbed with other
uh,
images, but I feel like your own image should be first, number one.
yeah, yeah. I think you've been super helpful for me at times with that.
Not always the app. Sometimes it's the like, all right, I ate a great breakfast and a great dinner, and I had some light cardio and I lifted some free weights. Just because at one point we were, ready to do, I don't know, run a marathon and then compete in a CrossFit competition doesn't mean that we're not in shape. It just means that like it's hard to look back at photos from 10 years ago and say like, oh, it's right around the corner. It's right there. It's like, well, yeah. However, I was also substitute teaching and you were delivering auto parts when we were in that kind of shape because we had that kind of free time. So it's all about that time
Yeah.
management and, like what's most important.
Yeah, I think that was all of it because in that schedule, that's the post service thing is you have the time to do it in that window and it's like you have to keep it going.
You got 4 classes a day. You got plenty of room for push-ups in between.
Yeah, I think even when I was playing poker for a living for that 2 years, right? Like I would go work out, like get up at like 3 in the afternoon, go work out at like 4 or 5, maybe eat something, maybe not, and then go play poker all night. And I think that's the point is that like the physical fitness is what gave me the longevity to be able to sit there and grind out 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, 24 hours straight of poker at a table. Physical fitness. I'm just making a statement that like that's what I was doing for money, like how I was making a living. And like I think in that 2 years, I learned more about how to run a business in that 2 years than I could have ever learned in a graduate program or in school.
Yeah, life experience.
You just become intimately familiar the return on invested capital, but this decisions are nonstop. And I mean, when you're sitting at a
Sure.
table, you might get like 20 to 30 hands to play, right? And then the internet came out and released poker into New Jersey again legally. You didn't have to play illegally through a VPN in Panama somewhere, with whatever. And I think the decision making that comes, you're playing now anywhere from 6 to 16 to 20 screens, whatever it is. It's thousands of little decisions that are almost become on autopilot based on the mathematical probabilities of what can happen as the cards unfold and things develop. So I think physical fitness is what allows for that quick decision making. The same thing with delivering auto parts while going to school. That balance of like, man, I got to spend half of the day here, and then I'm spending half the day at a college campus, and half the day at an internship, and then it's like, what the hell am I going to do? Then I'm delivering drywall, swinging a sledgehammer, towing stuff, helping people carry things, doing whatever I have to do to make a living. I think those were also the best times too,
Yep.
because there is the time to get 2-hour workout in all the time. And I think as things evolved in the last decade or so, it became where you have to schedule it because if you don't schedule it, life is moving way too fast to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, physical
Agreed.
fitness. It's super important.
Important.
Yeah, all the important stuff. I'm helping. I'm helping. Man, what do you think the message is for, of hope for 250 years of America? What can we share with people to finish up the podcast? What would
Just
you say?
keep creating. It's never going out of style to create, no longer than the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. Like people laugh all the time when these new inventions are up and coming. It's like, yeah, well, somebody thought that the entire nation was going to listen to those two documents. And guess what? I mean, I'm not going to say it's 1,000%. However, it just means that, I mean, if you have a framework for something and you're building a foundation, build that foundation. You never know when the entire country is going to be following it. Stay innovative.
Yeah, progress, innovation, be aggressive, take all the loans, put it
Yeah.
to good use, partner with a bunch of people, risk all the betrayals and rejections. Failure is definitely gonna happen. It needs to happen. It's good for the soul.
Hmm.
It's good for the soul. I think that's the part of it when, I've shared with you when I met you, is like, I am naive and ignorant more so than courageous. But I think it was cool in recent history in the last 96 hours, you got to meet my first NCO in the Army, and we're both old men
Hmm.
now. And I think that was kinda cool for me is that you were like, "Ah," like, "He's very different now," is what he said, but he still has that smirk, the same smirk he had before a gunfight or a conversation or something funny or when we were gonna do something, or it's the same confident smirk that I have on my face, and, yeah, I wanna keep that way. I'm gonna do that. But the innovation and progression is what creates that, and people are quick to argue and get upset about other things when they'll allow themselves to go below the standard of whatever that is for themselves. And I'm
Sure.
assuring anybody listening at this point, but I want to remind you, Mama, is that like it there has to be a degree of creativity and innovation move forward
Yep.
as a human, as a species, as people's community. I would say this though is what I'd say is for me, I'm probably too far on this. I take it super, super personal. I think it helps once it's taken personal for people to change. I don't think you need to take it to the extreme like I do. But then again, I've never seen a foxhole I wouldn't jump into because I've yet to meet too many people braver than me, right? So like I think that's how I look at the world. I don't know, whatever. But there's you. You're a little bit braver.
I don't know anybody more disciplined than me, so have at it. It'll be very organized foxhole with lots of supplies.
Rubs off of me. Well, here's to 250 more years of this good idea that's America. We get to benefit from all the good stuff. That's why we're able to do this
Yep.
podcast. Hopefully, it comes out okay. We were all over the place. We touched a bunch of stuff. I think we stepped on each other because we had like a break in contact at one point. The screen was blurry on my end and your end. My light went off a while ago. Now I'm that fuchsia blue color something. I don't know what to do with any of that anymore, Jamie. You need to come fix all of it. But I'm proud of the Vincere Project to conquer, be victorious always, overcome all the things. Mary, you are a big part of that. HR Train Events is set up for another expansion coming here soon. That is pretty crazy to think about. Absolutely remarkable. Multiple at the same time, which is even crazier. HR counseling is going to continue going forward, doing great things. And now we got to figure out who the next guest is. You have any thoughts, recommendations, ideas? Is it military? Is it civilian? What are you thinking? I don't need a person. Just what category? The people that I know, there's a whole series of interesting characters. Do I go former criminal? Somebody? Do I talk to somebody? Something? Whatever? Do we go lawyers, accountants, hedge fund people, educators, regular folks? What do you think?
I think you go civilian for the next one.
Civilian for the next one.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see what happens. But for the meantime, they're going to get more Vince, and that's going to be it's going to happen for a few weeks, and we'll find that special civilian that'll break through on the civilian side, and we'll keep building the thing. Thanks, Mama.